Hey everyone, welcome to our VWID Talk podcast. We are Jan and Wes, and we are so glad you're here. If you're passionate about Volkswagen EVs, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. Don't forget, you can also catch us on your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, OverDrive, and as well as YouTube for more visual experience. So Wes, what topic are we talking about today, and who's our special guest?
All right. So today we're talking about sound deadening, and I'm pretty excited. We were just talking with Nick. This is Nick Apicella. He's the CEO of ResoNix, which I was just telling him behind the scenes here that I was looking for like what are people using nowadays for sound deadening. Everybody knows about Dynamat and Second Skin and all these, and even Amazon is doing their own beautiful sound deadeners and things. And a lot of folks were saying, hey, everybody that cares is using ResoNix. And so my first thought was, okay, this is some huge company that's come out. And I started looking you guys up, and I was like, oh, this is like just a small, passionate operation. And I knew that I've read a lot of your articles on kind of the background of sound deadening and how to get the best effect out of the money you spent. And I was like, this is what we need, is somebody that can really help explain to the listeners how somebody is passionate about it. And I think I pegged you. So I guess my first question for you then is, with all this other stuff out there, I mean, you have to be passionate to decide I can do something better. So what got you into this? What made you think you could do better? And how are you doing that?
Yeah. So thank you guys for having me, first off. So how I even jumped into this weird little niche part of whatever industry it really is a little bit backwards compared to, I guess, most people. I owned and operated a high-end car audio shop in New York, where I'm from.
Okay.
And, part of building, fabricating, designing, and completing a high-end car stereo system is making sure that the vehicle is free of any rattles, distortions, buzzes, vibrations, things of that nature. All of that contributes to, just more distortion at the end of the day. All of it can be categorized as distortion, and anyone knows that distortion is the enemy of a good sounding sound system. And how I ended up in, I guess, this category as a manufacturer, and a company that's like actually doing this, is we were using another product that was well regarded and previously independently tested as the best performing product on the market. That was Sound Deadener Showdown. But anyways, I made this order on like I said, like February 5th, 2019, and he emails me back. The owner of the company, Don, emails me back almost immediately and says, "Hey Nick, I really appreciate your order and I appreciate your support over the years. I just wanted to let you know that your order with us will be the last one, as
Oh, wow.
we're closing." And I was like,
Okay.
"Whoa, what? What do you mean you're closing? Like, you're the guy. What do you mean you can't close?" Um, and
Wow.
after that email, it was radio silence. He shipped my order. I got it in 2 days, as I usually did. But like, I was like, this is such an important part of building a high-end sound system, which is what I specialized in. We
Yeah.
weren't just an in and out car audio shop. Like, if you didn't know about us, you never would have even found us, like, locally. Like, you know, we were tucked away in like an industrial lot. Like, we weren't like a shop, or we weren't like a retail space. It was more like a
Right.
specialty shop. And so I was like, okay, that kind of sucks. I got to pivot. This was one of the first major like pivots I've had to do in my career, because I was only into owning my own shop for maybe about a year and a few months. Um, and I was like, okay, I got to pivot here. I got to figure out another solution. So I was like, all right, I'll buy the Second Skin, I'll buy the Dynamat, I'll buy all the other, the Amazon, the Noiko, the Killmat. I'll buy all of these different products that were tested to do pretty well, like that performed close to Sound Deadener Showdown. And I tried them out. I got my hands on them. The thing is, the testing that the guy Chris Purdue did independently. Chris Purdue of the Facebook group, The Deadening, he was doing sound deadener testing years ago on the DIY mobile audio forums. And, he published the results, and that's where Sound Deadener Showdown really got like their kick from. Like everyone knew they were rock solid, like the best, can't argue it from that testing.
Yeah.
So I just picked up like the next best products. I had, 15 to 20 different sound deadeners at my shop. And I started, just you hold them, you get your hands on it, and you're like, okay, this one looked like it tested close to this. You get your hands on it and you start using it, you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
These seemingly small differences are not so small.
Yeah.
And that's when it was like, ugh. So I reached back out to Don, owner of Sound Deadener Showdown. And I was like, hey, let me buy your company.
I was wondering if that's where this was going.
I didn't have any money, but, me being a young, naive, first year business owner, I was like, yeah, screw it. I'll scrape together a few $1,000s and I'll be able to buy it. Frankly, he just didn't answer. None of this is working out. I was like, screw it. I know enough about how these products work, and I'm very resourceful. I can do this. I can make my own. I could get it made. I can either find his manufacturer or find someone else that can make something better. But I was like, you know what? I could do this though. Turns out it was not very easy at all. But I ended up so deep into the rabbit hole of trying to find a factory that makes good quality constrained layer dampers. How I ended up coming into this, I found out, it took me 6 weeks and over 2,000 phone calls, to get to ResoNix actually being a thing. I locked myself in my bedroom. My one employee that I had was pretty much running Apicella AutoSound, my, company that the shop, and found this guy that just runs a very tiny operation. That specializes in a few different like manufacturing processes. And he was the first person that I spoke to when I said, hey, I have this really good constrained layer damper that no longer exists. I need to match it or best it. Can you do it? And he was the first person that said, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not. If it's
that's what you want to hear, right?
Yeah, if it's as good as you're saying, maybe not. I really don't know. Can you send me a sample? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I sent him a sample, and he calls me back, like 4 or 5 days later when he gets it in the mail. And he says, yeah, we got our work cut out for us if you want to do better than this. And I was like, well, can you, what are my options? He's like, give us a couple weeks. Let me see what I could do. And 2 weeks later, he calls me, he's like, hey, I have some samples coming your way. And in that box of samples were various different options. And one of those options is still our ResoNix CLD squares to this day.
I love this, man. I got to tell you, going from you starting a whole new line of business because you want to provide quality to your customers, to finding another guy who's a small manufacturer who's willing to do custom work for, what a great story. I love it.
That's priceless. It's priceless.
And then
I've tried to manufacture. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the other products that came along with it, like closed cell foam, that was easy to procure. There's millions of
there's
different
lots of
foams out there.
manufacturers. Yeah,
it's just a matter of finding the right one for automotive applications that fit your specifications for flammability, water retainment, compression set, compression deflection. It's just diving through a million different samples of foam and then pricing stuff out, figuring out adhesive options, things like it. Like that was relatively easy. Offering butyl rope, that relatively simple, but finding one again that's proper for the automotive application was a little bit difficult, but easier than constrained layer damper. And that was my initial offering. It was just, our CLD squares, our CLD rectangles, which is just a thinner version of our product, a closed cell foam, and the butyl rope, and a mass loaded vinyl applicable Velcro. That was it.
Okay.
And mass-loaded vinyl, because for our listeners, they may not understand some of these acronyms or applications. We'll definitely get into this. But is there an easy way to quickly describe the butyl? Because many people know probably the butyl the most, right? I even found a product that had butyl and closed cell already sandwiched together.
But to give you the quick rundown, constrained layer damper, that is the technical term for your sound deadener. Butyl, an aluminum product. The point of this product is to constrain the panel that it is adhered to prevent resonance. It does not prevent resonance by adding mass. That is very outdated, very incorrect thinking. It does it by the shear forces that are generated within the butyl combined with the reference that the aluminum layer provides, and prevents flex. Closed cell foam product, or most foam products, are decouplers and kind of thermal insulators. Open cell foam products, which most open cells shouldn't be used in automotive applications, are sound absorbers. Sound absorbers, sound energy goes to pass through and gets converted into, mechanical energy via the resistance, the acoustic impedance that it provides, and the movement of the fibers and the, stuff like that. Actually, back to decouplers for a second. They just prevent panel-on-panel vibration just by being a sponge, so to say. Mass-loaded vinyl is a type of popular noise barrier. Noise barriers are very simple products. It's just mass. It's
heavy.
An air-gapped, decoupled mass that is used to prevent the transfer of sound energy from one space into another. That mass is essentially what reflects sound back out and prevents it from entering the new space.
So let me give a 30,000 foot summary if I can. You tell me what I got wrong. And first of all, I like what you just said about how adding the butyl layer, the constrained layer damper, is not to add mass, because I've read probably 10 years ago that that's exactly what it's for.
What it is,
And so I was misinformed. But so if I'm getting you right, the CLD, the butyl layer, prevents sounds by shear force. It prevents things from vibrating, keeps things from resonating, but it's not preventing sound waves from coming into your car. Okay. The closed cell foam is to keep, so I know the mass load about adding mass.
It's to isolate it. So closed cell foam is to isolate panels, like any panel that's like resonating, and it's touching another panel, it can, but if I put, a closed cell foam in between,
right, it doesn't do anything. Okay.
Yeah.
So the CLD keeps the car from creating resonance because of the moving forces of things. The CLD keeps things from moving against each other, and the mass loaded vinyl. Yeah, sorry, I said the wrong thing. The mass loaded vinyl, the mass of the product, keeps the sound waves from outside from coming into your car.
Short summary, yes. Yeah.
Basically.
And then a sound absorber as well. There's sound absorbers convert sound energy into a different form of
heat.
Energy. Yeah.
Basically heat, right?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons we wanted you on here is because because we're EV focused, and mostly Volkswagens, but I've got a Mach-E as well. So I'm a double EV owner. And because they're so much quieter, I feel like the sound deadening is a lot more important. And so one of the things was, how do you feel about the market for your products going forward as more people move to EVs and realize, there's a lot less noise generated, but you notice it. You notice what's coming from the outside,
that's
tire noise, road noise.
It's very bizarre. It's a really bizarre phenomenon. It's almost like the more you quiet down your car, the more you're able to hone in on the ones you can't fix. With EVs, yes, you lose the engine noise, which is audible. It's transferred as sound energy through the air, but you also have less mechanical energy transferred into the body, which is eventually transferred into the air as resonance. That is one noise source that's completely killed. So now you're able to really hone in on, oh my God, I hear so much air above me. My tires are screaming. My every little panel creak and vibration is it sounds ridiculous. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is not necessarily an EV issue. It's kind of an EV issue, but it's an all automotive manufacturing issue. It's all of these manufacturers are starting to cheap out on their build processes, their build materials, and just overall quality. You know, I know this is, it's a Volkswagen podcast, but Tesla, Subaru, and Porsche and Toyota are at the top of like what I get inquiries for.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an EV thing. Outside of the fact that, again, like this psychoacoustics part is okay, we can hone in on the little things that we never noticed. It's still a perception.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that about Tesla, because I've heard, they put all their engineering effort in the cooling systems and batteries and motors. They've done a great job with that, and the computing.
Yeah.
Right. But I've heard this before. They have a reputation for that. And it doesn't surprise me about Subaru and Toyota, because they're making cars for the masses, and they don't have the time the money, the budget to sound deaden. But I'm surprised to hear you say Porsche.
Yeah, because we still treat them as VW, right? They're the highest, one of the highest brands of VW. Volkswagen, of course, being potentially the lower here in the US, but in between you also have Audis, right? So we would expect that there is some like better level, better materials, better sound deadening going up.
And that's not been your experience?
Well, no, it's not even that. The thing is, Porsche, while it is a higher end brand, it like borderline exotic vehicles, but all of them definitely fall within luxury vehicle. The thing is, you get into the 911s and the 718s, which is the Cayman, and who buys a 911? Who buys a Cayman? Sports car enthusiasts, right?
So they want to hear the engine.
Yep.
They do.
There was one real. It's also market specific. I literally heard from somebody from factory that were making the VW Touareg that used to be sold here in Americas. That for the American market, they specifically remove some part of sound insulation from the firewall between the engine and the compartment, because the owners would like to kind of feel and hear the engine a little bit more.
The problem is some of these cars, like the GT3 or the GT4 or like, God forbid, the GT3 RS. You ever driven one of these cars? They're violent. It is so fun. Oh my God. But after 15 minutes, even a GT3 Touring, after 15 minutes, your brain is shaking. There's just so much drone. There's so much resonance. There's so much just like it's going that like, it's like, okay, anyone that's like daily driving it or like even weekend warrioring it with that, and they're driving for more than 10, 15 minutes at a time, I promise you, the guys that are saying like, oh yeah, my favorite, song in that car is the engine. Yeah. Drive it for more than 15 minutes and you will realize, this gets old.
It's old.
Not that it gets
fast,
old, but it's like, it's not that it gets old. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot on
it takes senses. A toll, right? It takes a toll on your honestly, your stress levels, I bet.
Yeah. Like you get out of that car and you're like, oh, thank God. But that was so fun. So these people spend, on a GT3, $250,000 at minimum for one of these things. And they can't drive it for more than 15 minutes at a time, or their wife refuses to get into it because it's so freaking loud. And just because these are high-end cars doesn't mean they're doing high-end solutions as far as sound treatment to them. They do have to hit a specific weight for not just performance reasons, but also for gas and all things like that. Even just the materials, like, hey, we can't do all of this sound deadener and sound absorber and mass-loaded vinyl, like molded mass-loaded vinyl, because we need to save this much money on the production.
And by the way, we talked about this with Tom Volk. He was one of our special guests. He's a Emmy award-winning automotive journalist, and we exactly talked about the what is the soul of a car, right? And I think that the discussion was that it really depends based on the application, because if you're building a sports car, you're emphasizing different set of features or capabilities in that car, and you have to de-emphasize something else. And then unfortunately there is some budget that you have to fit into, right? So there are different levers that the manufacturer can pull, but and create that specific product that is the right product for the right audience. So, for example, for the GT3, so have you been doing some sound deadening for a GT3 or any high-end sports car like that?
Yeah. The GT3 is probably my most commonly worked on vehicle. Like that's
Okay.
Most of the people that reach out to me, hey Nick, like can you do this work for me? It's usually GT3 owners, because I did one for someone and I took a ton of photos and a ton of video content. Again, so if you think like VWID owners are fanatics, Porsche 911 owners are psychotic.
That's great.
Well,
but
in like a good way.
But asking you if they're going to drop, I don't know what it would be for you to do the full treatment, but in your shop having all your $5 or 10 grand or something is really at least small compared to the cost of a car like this.
Exactly.
For the quality of life you get.
Yeah, these guys have the money. They just spent $250,000 plus on a car that they can't even use that long because one, it's too violent, and two, their wife won't get inside of it. You know, they spent all this money on this car, and it's like, what's another X amount? And Porsche owners are a very specific type of breed where they do have money and they do have a vehicle that's very nice, but they are not afraid to modify them at all.
So let me move on to the next stuff though. So I mean, I'm going to ask. I wrote down questions because I had so many things I wanted to ask you. But the first one I'm going to ask this backwards was if you're really just going to do one thing. And I think you kind of already hinted at this. It sounds like you were saying instead of like foam or mass loaded vinyl, the one thing you should do is the butyl. Is that right? The CLD. Or
it depends.
Or is your answer don't just do one thing?
My answer. All right. So. Let me answer it. Let me answer the question directly first.
Okay.
The answer, and it's not a good one, but the answer is it depends. Every car is different, and every car presents a unique set of acoustic challenges.
You might be looking at, am I trying to constrain the natural resonance, or am I trying to prevent sound from entering the cab?
I'll tell you this: if you have a vintage vehicle, constrained layer damper, step one, like it's not even a question. If you have like an old muscle car, constrained layer damper, that's it. But if it's a modern vehicle, there's no good. I would honestly, if you forced me, like if you had me like by the neck and said, Nick, I need one option, I would say, don't bother.
Really?
Okay.
Wow.
I would say don't bother, because sound deadening a vehicle properly is so much work that only going in there and only doing one thing is like, are you just wasted X amount of hours just to do that? Are you kidding me? It was just going on that Facebook group, the Deadening, that I mentioned before. Someone posted earlier, either today or yesterday, saying, oh my God, this was so much work. I now see exactly why no one would ever waste their time with a cheaper, like some of you people say, like I would never waste my time with a cheaper product. A modern vehicle, any average modern vehicle, 30, 40, 60 hours of work to do the whole thing. You're really going to want to save a few $100 on materials just to like set.
And so when you say the whole thing, you mean adding CLD to the passenger side of the outside door panels. You mean pulling out the carpet and putting it.
Just remove the interior, roof, including seats and the head trim, right? So pretty much removing all the plastics from the inside.
The carpet, the plastics, everything. But even if like you don't do the whole vehicle, doing a pair of doors, even for me as someone who's like experienced, like a GT3, I can sound deaden a GT3's doors probably blindfolded at this point. It still takes me 4 hours of work to do it properly.
Wow.
And it's like, do you people really want to waste all
that
time?
means it would take me 8 hours or more, right, to do it
I've
myself,
had customers tell me like, to do my doors, it took me the entire weekend. You know?
Yeah, that tracks.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's a good answer though, is, don't just, why waste your money or more importantly, why waste that much time if you're not going to get that much of a result? And so I guess these questions kind of go together. So a lot of modern cars, a lot of guys say, I don't want the panoramic roof, but if you get all the other stuff you get, you're going to have to get the panoramic roof if you want the other options. And so that is obviously not something you can, I mean, I guess you could, but, you know,
I've had customers do crazier.
Yeah, right. But I mean, so you're not doing that, but that leaves you really not a lot of resonating stuff on the roof.
Yeah.
There's with these huge panel roof. So what have you seen? I guess, first of all, acoustic glass, right? You've got some versions of like even the Mustang Mach-E came with acoustic laminated glass windows, just the windshield and the front two windows. Mine did not come with that. Does that, I mean, that's just a small layer in between
it's an
the
air
glass.
Gap. It's
so,
a dual pane window essentially, and there's an air
so
gap.
it's going to prevent some transmission of outside sound, but it's not really doing, but does it do much?
I have no way to answer that because that's like saying, does a constrained layer damper do much? Like, does this constrained layer damper do much? It's like, well, I don't know. We don't have the test data on it.
But if I found somebody that was willing to sell me the door window glass out of a wrecked car,
again, that's the thing. Like, we don't know how good that acoustic glass is that they're using. If it's like good acoustic glass, like, and they put a lot of engineering into it, then maybe, you know, that might be.
Can you apply films that do that yourself? No, because it's not because it's sandwiched between. It's an air gap. It's
literally
not a film.
Like thicker and
it's thicker and there's an air gap.
Literally
so,
an air gap.
Usually there's an air gap. On like luxury cars, there's usually an air gap. I don't know about on the Mach-E, but frankly, knowing Ford, they're probably not doing anything crazy.
I think they call it laminated glass. Right?
Laminated, that's what they call it.
There is some adhesive in between that is fully transparent.
So maybe there's not an air gap. Maybe it's just an adhesive in between.
No physical air gap, but there's a separation between these two layers.
There's at least two layers going on there.
Yeah.
So I know you're going to give me another "it depends" answer here, but like but that's okay. So we talked about what to do first, and you're kind of like, well, it depends on the car, but with what part of the car to do first, that's kind of why I was asking about the panoramic roof. Does that also depend on the model of the car? I mean, obviously. Yeah. Okay. So if you got a loud engine, you're going to do the firewall, right? And if you got
very rarely is an engine loud enough to where going through the effort of like doing a firewall is difficult. You know, let me ask you before we get into it, like, do you guys actually work on vehicles or no?
Yeah. Well, I mean, work on in the sense that we take things apart. We're not mechanics. But
have you ever taken out the dashboard of a modern vehicle?
I tried to avoid that as much as I could.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, me too. So like, and the reason being is it's not fun. It's not easy. It's very labor intensive and time consuming.
Right.
So I will usually do everything in my power to never have to remove a dashboard. The thing is, you kind of have to do that to do a firewall properly. So it's kind of one of those things where it's a value proposition of time versus end result. And usually a firewall is very structural and it isn't letting in that much sound energy. It might be coming through the hood and then through the windshield. It might be coming around through the doors. It might be coming through the fender liners. It might be coming down and up through the floor. It might not even be coming through the firewall. And this is why I have so many resources on my website, because my goal is to educate the customer enough that they can make these decisions on their own because they have the car in front of them. But yeah, like what area of the vehicle, in the buyer's guide, I do have a breakdown of, generally speaking, the most valuable like targets, so to say. Doors, roof, firewall, hood, trunk, quarter panels, wheel wells, stuff like that. But it's general. Every car is different.
Well, because in an EV, tire noise matters a lot.
It does. And it purely comes down to being, it's now the biggest offender. That's it.
Right. So I guess kind of the last thing I want to get at with acoustics. I mean, if you're doing mass loaded vinyl, that needs to be attached. You can't just have it in there to make weight. You need to kind of put it against the panel too.
Mass loaded vinyl is a tricky one. It used to be the standard product for noise barriers. It used to be like, if you had 10, 15 years ago, if you had to pick one product to use, like to answer your question from before, it's decouple layer of mass loaded vinyl.
Okay.
Don't bother with constrained layer damper. Do a decoupled layer of mass-loaded vinyl. That'll net you the highest performance if you're just trying to quiet down noise in a vehicle while driving. The thing is, in modern vehicles, tolerances are so tight, and there's so many bends and curves and contours and compounding curves
It's
that
thick.
mass-loaded vinyl is pretty much, it's almost not applicable in modern day vehicles. It's almost like
so people that haven't seen this, it's a big, heavy piece of vinyl.
Yeah.
It's almost like a anti-fatigue mat that you'd have in your kitchen, except thicker and heavier, right?
Yeah.
And
So
there's nowhere to.
Yeah, your standard mass-loaded vinyl is 1/8 of an inch thick, and it weighs 1 pound per square foot.
Wow.
1/8 of an inch thick is not that thick. The problem isn't its thickness inherently. The problem is you can only bend it in one way. You can't bend it on compounding curves, like not even a little bit. Mass-loaded vinyl cannot conform outside of a two-dimensional bend, outside of a two-dimensional shape. So it's pretty much completely useless in most modern vehicles. This is actually why I came out with ResoNix Barrier, which is 1/32 of an inch thick sheet lead that is encapsulated in foam. So it's a fraction as thick. It's much thinner. But not only that, is it bends and conforms so easy and so nicely, and it weighs twice as much, so it's able to block 2 times the amount of sound in theory.
But I mean, you could get. I mean, it's heavier. You could do better if you used a gold layer in between than lead, right? Isn't that heavier per? Oh, maybe not.
It's a little expensive.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So the last kind of question about that is, if you're doing, instead of foam, if you're trying to prevent sound from getting through, I've been saving this stuff for my wife's. I think I know what your answer is going to be. My wife gets like stuff mailed to her and cold boxes, right? And there's this, which is, and then there's like, kind of a cellulose material.
Yeah.
And then there's stuff like mineral wools, like Roxwool and Rockwool, which I think is the same thing.
Yeah.
Do those things do anything to prevent sound transmission?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
Is that a waste
so what you have, can you hold up both of them again, just so I can see? So
they're similar. So this is
so that looks like it's a combination. All right, so both of these materials look to be like some form of what is called jute. Jute is shredded and recycled. So the blue one is recycled denim. The other
jeans. There you go.
Yeah. But they're both cotton based. They're both recycled, shredded cotton, and at the end of the day, they were used in, like, if you had a vehicle in the 80s that you ever took apart, or early 90s, you're finding jute underneath the carpet. You're finding jute. That was the sound absorber of the 80s and 90s. And sound absorption is a very effective way of reducing noise. The thing is, jute, it's much less predictable. As you can see, it's just recycled materials. You have no idea what's really going in there. Number two, it's cotton based. Cotton grows mold. If you had a car in the 80s and 90s and water ever got in it, what happened? It got nice and stinky, didn't it?
Yeah.
So
you just don't want to put it anywhere where it could get water either.
It's very cheap and inexpensive and somewhat like semi-effective as a sound absorber and thermal insulator, but it's not good to use when we have modern day, materials. And then you mentioned Roxwool and Rockwool and like various different insulation types, like similar to like fiberglass insulation. These are very good sound absorbers, like very good sound absorbers. I would say Rockwool is among one of the best sound absorbers ever made. The problem is, don't put that in your car.
No, it belongs in your house, not in your car.
you will have a very bad time putting that in your car. You might think, oh no, it's fine. I remember, years ago when I first started with ResoNix, and I didn't even think I'd ever even have a sound absorption product because it just never crossed my mind, and there weren't really materials accessible to a little aftermarket company like mine. I went to Home Depot and I bought a thing of Rockwool, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to use this. I hear people talking about it on the forums, and you see the data on it, and it's really good. It has incredible sound absorption coefficient properties. And the thing is, you get it, and the second you start to pull it apart, it's just dust, mineral dust everywhere. And I
Yep.
immediately realized, like, oh, I am not putting that anywhere near
Mhm.
my vehicle.
And
Yeah.
especially that the vehicle vibrates all the time, right? So it's technically shedding that dust all the time. So
All the
Yeah.
time.
I
Yeah.
would say as long as it's not under drywall, just don't do it.
Well, I see
I don't
what
know.
you mean, though. It's okay.
It's
It
nasty
was just a
stuff.
thought. I haven't bought a bunch of rock wool. I was just, before
Yeah.
we met you, I was considering it. So now I'm not. Thank you.
Some people in the aftermarket audio industry will still like use it because they're like, nope, anything to get the best performance possible. And here's the other thing too. Just because it is not prone to growing mold or mildew does not mean that it will not hold water, or doesn't mean it won't hold water. It
Oh, it
will
will.
hold water. It
It will.
absolutely,
Yep.
it holds water and it holds onto it good.
Yep.
And the thing
Okay.
is,
So you
this is
definitely don't want it in your door cavity then. I mean,
no, and this is with
yeah.
any sound absorber. If there is water in your sound absorber, it is no longer acting as a sound absorber because that water is taking up the pathways that the sound energy is traveling through and getting absorbed
And
within.
transmitting it.
It is, yeah,
So
now
it's
it
a
is
conductor. Yeah.
exactly.
And
It's
that's
transmitting it
why
as
you
if it's just
use
another mass.
Yeah.
and that's why you use a closed cell foam, not an open cell foam, right?
No,
Or
closed cell
no,
foam
that's
does
not why.
not. Yeah, closed cell foam doesn't absorb sound. At
That's a
least not
decoupler.
effectively. It's used as a decoupler. For
Okay.
sound absorption inside of door cavities or anywhere you can get moisture, you use an open cell foam that is hydrophobic melamine.
Okay.
We offer ResoNix Guardian and ResoNix Lockout, and if you pour water on them, it falls. It's like a ceramic coated car. It just falls right off.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So thanks everybody for being with us again today. Nick, thank you so much. We're so happy to talk to you about so many in-depth things about sound deadening and car audio. And remember, if you like this kind of thing, if you're into just EVs or Volkswagen EVs or anything, please remember to subscribe, tell your friends, check us out on the Volkswagen VWIDtalk.com forums. Of course, you can get us on Apple Podcast and any other place you get your podcast, and watch us on YouTube. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, Nick. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
of course. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys. This was cool.